Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Paul Sports Takes. Today's video will be my personal top 10 moments from the track and field world this year. I've had the framework of this video made basically since Worlds ended, but I've been waiting for the Chicago and Berlin marathons to wrap up, and the Chicago Marathon was ran this morning. And it is a good thing that I made that decision because they were both very, very big time moments. I don't know when this video is going to go up, but I'm filming it at about 5:20 on Sunday, October 8th. So an hour and a half ago, I watched the Patriots lose their second straight game by 34 plus points. So that really bummed me out. And so now I'm going to talk about the best track moments this year to lighten my mood. All right. So before we get into the actual top 10, we're going to be doing some honorable mentions. So my first honorable mention is the men's 5,000-meter race from the Oslo Diamond League. And this race was a very, very exciting 5K race because you saw Jacob Kiplimo and Yomif Kajelcha run the same exact time down to the hundredth of a second over 5,000 meters. That is just wild. That it is the joint sixth fastest time ever ran. And it was just a crazy. I have like three or four more distance races that I'm going to talk about throughout this video. And it was just a crazy year for distance running on the track all around. There were so many fast times. There were so many races where you had two of the fastest times in history battling right down to the line, and it was just a great year. And this race was really a really phenomenal one, but it just barely misses out on that top 10. My next honorable mention is Shericka Jackson's double at the Prefontaine Classic, where she won the 100 and the 200 meters in times of 10.70 and 21.57. She won the 100 over Elaine Thompson-Herah, over world champion Sha'Carri Richardson, over Marie-José Taylor, and it was just a really good cap to her season where she saw such improvement in the 100 this year. So for her to close it out with a time that fast was just really good to see. And then she came back the next day and ran the 200, and I think it was her like third race that she had ran after Worlds. She dropped the 21:41 at Worlds, and everyone was like, "Oh, okay, this is like officially even more world record watch than we already thought." Um, but she really kind of got screwed over by she did not get good wind in like any of her 200-meter races when she was like peaking this year. And so she ended up running 21:57 at pre. And it was also, she didn't really have anyone. I think she won by like half a second. Like she didn't have anyone running with her at all. Um, but yeah, that was just a crazy double on back to back days at like the end of such a long season for her to show that she still had that much kick in her legs at that point in the season was just really remarkable. Another honorable mention goes to the women's pole vault competition in Budapest, where obviously you saw Katie Moon and Nina Kennedy tie, and they decided to share the gold medal. Anytime you have a moment like that in track and field, it's just really special. You saw it with Tamberi and Barshim in Tokyo, and it was just such a good height too that they had both cleared. Like it's 490 is nothing to scoff at all. And I believe that was a Oceanian record for Nina Kennedy. It was one of the best jumps of Katie Moon's life. So that was just really good to see. And I think it's really good for the sport, especially for pole vault specifically, because it got a lot of attention onto, especially women's pole vault, which is something that I feel like kind of gets overlooked a lot. Another honorable mention goes to both of the 800-meter races, the Prefontaine Classic, the men's and the women's, both of them in basically the last major meet of the year. You saw a new world lead be established. In the men's race, you had Emmanuel Wanyonyi and Marco Arap both go under 143. In the women's race, you saw Athing Mu come back from a bronze at Worlds and break 155 for the first time in her career. And I need to check on what that places her all time now, but it is one. I think she ran like 154.7 or something. And that is a crazy mark. And then Keely Hodgkinson ran really fast for second. And then you had Natoya Gould-Topping kind of come out of nowhere and beat Mary Murat to take third. Both of those races, for the way to cap off that season, and especially in the 800s, there was an event where in both genders it was so close all year between kind of the top group. That was just really, really cool to see and a great way to end the season. Another honorable mention, this one, it kind of pains me to not have it in the top 10, but Lagi Tasaga Collins, her performance to win the gold at Worlds, going from 12th to 5th to 1st in 3 throws, and it just, wow. I mean, if somebody says they saw it coming that isn't like one of her coaches or something, or like one of her friends, because apparently they all saw it coming. But if you ask anyone that's just like a track and field fan if they saw that coming, nobody is going to tell you that. It was so unexpected for her to come out and overtake Valerie Allman like that and go 69 plus, become the first American world champion in the women's discus. It was a very, very special moment. And her reaction after, and her like what everything she did in the press conferences was just so awesome. Everything that she did was so good for the sport, and it really pained me to not put it in the top 10, but it just barely missed out. I know this is basically like a top 20 list at this point, but I promise these are the last 2 honorable mentions. So first, it's going to be Ryan Krauser at Worlds. Wow. I mean, I've talked about it at length already in all of my Worlds videos, but 23:51 with 2 blood clots in your leg when you almost didn't even compete. It's just, it is mind boggling the things that he can do. And he basically had like 2 weeks before that with no training. My understanding is correct. And then for silver, you had Leonardo Fabri hit that huge PB at 22:3. And then in bronze, you had Joe Kovac's medal for the 5th World Championships in a row. So just top to bottom. And it was a really deep comp, too. There were a bunch of guys over like 21.5. It was just all around a really, really good meet from everyone. And then it's obviously capped off by the second greatest throw in history. And then my last honorable mention, and this is absolutely the closest one of these honorable mentions to making it on the top 10 list. It really probably should be, but I just couldn't figure out where to put it. I have the world record performances in the men's marathon in Chicago and the women's marathon in Berlin. You had Kelvin Kiptum, who he had run 2 marathons before in his life, and both of those were in the top 5 fastest times ever. So there were a lot of people that thought he was going to be on world record watch for this one. But then there were also a lot of people that thought he wouldn't be able to get the world record unless he was running with Eliud Kipchoge, who he ran in the Berlin Marathon, not the Chicago Marathon. And he won, obviously, because that's just what he does in Berlin. And he ran, it was a little bit slower than I think what some people expected, maybe, but it was still, I don't know exactly, but it was still 2:02 mid. So it's still one of the fastest times ever. But Kelvin Kiptum comes out in Chicago when I'm filming it this morning, and he runs 2 hours and 35 seconds. Dips under 2:01 for the first time ever in a record legal race, because Kipchoge's 159 challenge is not World Athletics recognized. For the first time ever in a World Athletics recognized events, a man breaks 2:01 in the marathon. He goes 2 minutes and 35 seconds. And it is so much faster than I think anyone thought that he was going to run. Like, maybe people thought he was going to break Kipchoge's record by like 5 seconds or maybe 10 seconds, but he broke it by over half a minute, which is, it hurts my head to think about running that fast. He ran for 26.2 miles. He was running at a little over 4:30 mile pace, which I don't think I could run a 4:30 mile pace for more than like 300 meters. It's crazy. And then on the women's side of things in Berlin, you had Tigsit Assefa. She ran 2:11:53, I believe. Took the women's world record under 2:12. It was such a crazy time jump. And that one, like, at least Kiptum was kind of, him breaking the world record was kind of on people's radar. I don't think anyone was talking about the women's record going down in Berlin. and it got destroyed. And then in Chicago this morning, you saw Safan Hassan run the second fastest women's marathon ever. It's been a crazy couple of years in the marathon. Basically, ever since Kipchoge broke the first world record, I think he broke it for the first time in 2019. It's just been an onslaught, particularly in the women's side of things. Because you've seen a lot of the like long distance track runners, like Letesenbet Gide has ran really well in marathons. Obviously, Hassan. You've seen them kind of migrate into the longer road distance, and they have just crushed it. So it's really cool to see. And then another note about Kelvin Kiptum is that he just broke Eliud Kipchoge's world record, and he is 23. And like I said, this is his third marathon ever. So the things he's going to do by the time Kipchoge's 38 and still running 202. Like the things he is going to be doing when he is in his like late 20s are terrifying to think about. All right. Well, that section took a lot longer than I expected it to because I just cannot stop myself from yapping about track and field. But now into the actual top 10. At my 10th favorite moment of this year, I have the men's and women's 100-meter finals from Budapest at the World Championships. Partially, this may be American bias. It may be the bias of if you watch my top 10 favorite athletes in the world, Sha'Carri Richardson and Noah Lyles are both in my top 5, I believe, favorite athletes in the world. Um, but yeah, watching them both win and the styles with which they won was incredibly exciting. And I think that extends to even a non-American fan base. Because you look at Noah Lyles, who obviously was the like hands down favorite for the 200. Then he said he's going to double in the 100. He was making all these crazy claims about running 965 and talking about how he was like absolutely going to win and he was going to get the double. And there was such a strong field around him of Coleman, Curley, Arnell Hughes, Omanyala, Oblique Seville coming on, mostly at Worlds, but especially at the end of the season. And it was definitely not a certainty that he would win. And I feel like most people probably didn't have him picked even heading into the final. And then for him to run a big PB at 983 and take the win, it was, I mean, he just did it in such Noah Lyles fashion. And that was probably one of the top moments of Budapest for me, I think. I remember just sitting there and I just felt like a pit in my stomach. Because I know I talked about this a little bit already, but I wanted him to win so badly. I didn't think he would, and then he did, and I lost my mind. And then for Sha'Carri, it was a kind of different situation because I feel like most people thought she had a much better chance to win because she had been running really consistently, really well in the 100 all year. But similar to the men's field, it was a historically strong field in the women's race where you had Shericka Jackson, Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce, Marie-Josée Tillou, Julian Alfred, and tons of other people that were capable of dropping something really fast. Then Sha'Carri goes out in lane 9 through no fault of her own. It's just because her semifinal was stupid. She had a bad start in the semis, comes out in lane 9, gets the best start of her life, probably, gets out, pulls ahead of everyone at the end. Shericka Jackson on the inside doesn't even know what happened, but it's Sha'Carri Richardson in lane 9, running 10:65 to take the world title and running the one of the fastest times in the history of women's sprinting. It was awesome. It was so validating, I think, for people who have been supporting Sha'Carri since 2021, since everything went down there. Um, and it was so validating, obviously, for Sha'Carri herself to come out on this global stage, her first world championships, and just say, I am here and I will be here for a very long time. And those two races in conjunction with each other and just kind of the story they tell together, I think, were amazing and definitely make them worthy of being on this list. In the number 9 spot, I know I've already talked about this one at length too, but I have the men's discus final from the World Championships. This one, whew, I cannot say enough about this one. Let's just skip to the last round because the first 5 rounds were great, but there was nothing that crazy that happened in them. But you get to the 6th round, and with the second to last throw of the competition, reigning world champion, current world leader, Christian Che, steps into the circle, throws 70.02. Second straight world championships over 70 meters for him. And that is just really big because throwing 70 in a stadium doesn't happen that often, especially at world championships. This kind of pressure on you. You go 70.02 to move into the gold medal position. All the Daniel Stahl fans across the world were very sad, including myself. And then Daniel Stahl comes into the circle. And he looks great, and he looks ready. And he gets in there, and he goes 71.46. Whoo-wee! And then he doesn't celebrate. He just walks out like this, waiting for the mark. And the mark comes in, and he still doesn't really celebrate. And then he hits. I'll put the picture in here because it's like my favorite picture ever. Him going like this with the Omega timing thing behind him, showing Daniel Stahl 71.46 championship record. Oh my goodness, that picture goes so hard. I love that picture, and I love Daniel Stahl, and I love this meet. 71.46 would be the 10th best throw of all time if that wasn't only the 3rd best throw of Daniel Stahl's career. This meet also marked his 16th meet ever over 70 meters. He's insane. His longevity is insane. His consistency is insane. And now 2-time world champion Daniel Stahl is insane. At the 8th spot, I have the men's 1,500 meter race from the Diamond League in Oslo. This race, in conjunction with the 5K that I talked about earlier in the honorable mentions, this race really kind of set the tone for the craziness that we would see, not just in this event, but over men's middle distance running as a whole this year. You had Jakob Ingebrigtsen run 3:27.95, which at the time was a European record, world lead, all that good stuff. You had Yard Nagus and Ollie Hoare also run area records. There was another national record in the mix. And this is the big one. You had 8 men run under 3 minutes and 30 seconds. That for that quality of a field is incredibly rare. And especially for that to happen just at a Diamond League meet and pretty early on in the season too. Like not necessarily closer to world championships where a lot of these athletes are peaking. To have that kind of high level running from 8 different men all in one meet was crazy. And then obviously at the top of that was Jakob Ingebrigtsen running what was then, like I said, PB, European record, world lead, but that would not stay for long. At number 7, I have the women's 4x400 meter relay from the World Championships. The story of this one is just, it is redemption. And it was the last event of the whole meet. And the meet started with Femke Bol of the Netherlands falling with like 5 meters left in the mixed 4x4. And it ended with her running a 48.75 second anchor leg split in the women's 4x4 to take gold for Netherlands. She ran from 3rd into 1st over the last 80 meters. She had to make up probably about 15 of those. It was poetic. You could not possibly script a better ending to this. And it was so great to see because this kind of storyline could not happen to a nicer person. I feel like everyone in the world was just completely gutted with what happened in the mixed 4x4. Then obviously a couple days before this, she won the 400 hurdles. And then for her to come back and end the meet on this high of a high was just, like I said, it is poetic, and you could not write any single moment better than this for Femke Bol. Coming in at number 6, I have the men's pole vault at the Prefontaine Classic, and Mondo Duplantis finally clearing 6:23 and setting a new world record. He jumped 6:22 indoors this year, and so then 6:23 was like the mark for him all season. And he jumped at 6:23, I think 6 or 7 times throughout the year, And it was like every time he would just get a little bit closer and a little bit closer and a little bit closer. And honestly, for me, like watching him, every time he lined up on the runway with the bar set at 6:23, I was like, oh, he's clearing this. I feel like that's the way that a lot of people felt about it too. And so then when you just consistently saw him not get it, you were like, okay, this is kind of strange. Because with the way that Mondo's been jumping the last couple years, you feel like, oh, he can jump 630 or something. He's just going to make it go up 1 centimeter at a time just through sheer will. But that appeared to not be the case this season. And then at the Prefontaine Classic, last meet of the season, last opportunity to set this world record, he comes out first attempt, clears 623, and it was immaculate. Just let Mondo do every single meet at Hayward, and then the world record will be at like 7 meters by the time he retires. Because he capped off Eugene, the World Championships last year, with a world record. Then he capped off Prefontaine Classic this year with a world record. This man he does not miss. And it was a great end to another great season from the greatest pole vaulter of all time. All right, we're coming into the top 5, into the top half of this list. And at number 5, I have Faith Kipyegon's big is an understatement. It was a summer that really redefined what we think of as possible in the realm of women's distance running. In early June, she set world records in the 1500 and the 5000 a week apart from each other. The 1500 was kind of expected. She ran 349, first woman to ever break 350. But then the 5K, I think, was not necessarily on a lot of people's radars. She was running with Letesenbet Gidey, who was the world record holder, and they were basically neck and neck up until the last 200 meters, where Faith Kipyegon's last 400 is just something that I don't think we've ever seen before in women's distance running. It is just without fail every time so much faster than anyone else can really do, except for maybe the person that I'm going to talk about next, but we'll get into that. But yeah, so she dominated in the 1500-meter race, and then she took down the reigning world record holder by over 2 seconds in the 5K race. And then, if that wasn't good enough, near the end of July, she's running the mile, and she breaks the mile world record too. And this was a race that saw 3 area records and 3 national records go down. And she still won by a couple of seconds. She ran so much faster than anybody thought that she would. And then if 3 world records in the span of like a month and a half wasn't enough for you, then she becomes the first woman to ever complete the 1500, 5000 meter double at Worlds. And she won both of those in races that just looked entirely too easy for how fast she was running. And then she comes to Prefontaine and she runs like the 3rd or 4th fastest 1500 ever. She's just ridiculous. And I cannot say enough about what Faith Kipyegon did this year. Especially, she's had 3 kids. I don't know how that is humanly possible to have 3 kids and then get better when you're already like the greatest 1500-meter runner ever, and then get better, and then get better in the 5K too. Faith Kipyegon doesn't make any sense, but she is amazing, and we as a track community love her dearly. All right, so I hinted at this next one a little bit when I was talking about Faith Kipyegon, but at number 4, I have the women's 5,000 meters race from the Prefontaine Classic, where we saw Gudaf Tsegay run 14 minutes flat. A little bit over. It was like 14 minutes and like 0.2 of a second. But basically 14:00 over the 5,000, which it shattered what anybody I think thought was like humanly possible at this point. Because Faith Kipyegon, when she broke the 5,000 meter world record in June, she was running with the former world record holder, and the former world record holder ran at what at that point was the 3rd fastest time ever. And Faith Kipyegon took a 1.5 seconds off the world record. And that was huge. And then Gudaf Tsegay comes out and takes 5 full seconds off of Faith Kipyegon's world record. That's crazy. 5 seconds in distance running is an eternity. Um, yeah, that is it. I did not really believe what the clock said when she crossed the finish line. And then you have Beatrice Chebet finishing behind her in second, and she ran just behind Faith Kipyegon's world record. She missed out on it by like half a second, but she ran 14:05 too. Um, yeah, that race broke my brain a little bit, but just seeing how she finished, I think it was like her last kilometer was one of the, I mean, honestly, it's a world record, so it's obviously one of the fastest ever recorded, but it was just like mind bendingly fast. And seeing her do that when Faith Kipyegon the day before had ran the 15, it was crazy. And now I want to see Faith and Gudaf race the 5K at a Diamond League meet where there's pacers and there's no like championship on the line or anything. I just want to see them go against each other head to head. Throw Gide and Chebet in there too, and just see. I mean, if they do that, I don't think there's any way they don't break 14. But I really want to see that now. So, Lord Sebastian Coe, please make that happen next year. All right. Number 3 is the moment that I am most excited to talk about because I think I've kind of hinted at it a little bit in my past couple videos that I've talked about Ryan Krauser, but this is the one where I can really like just dig into it and talk about how insane it is. So, at the LA Grand Prix this year in like mid-May, so pretty early on in the season still, the men's shot put competition, it I it's hard for me to talk about it because I just kind of lose my mind a little bit whenever I think about it. I believe the women's shot put competition came before this, and you saw Maggie Ewan throw 20:45. So you're like, okay, it's a good day for shot put. That was one of the first throws in American history. That's a good day for shot put. Then Ryan Krauser on his first throw comes out and goes 23:23. That point, the world record was 23:37. 23:23 was, I think, like the fourth best throw ever, maybe third. So we did that, and we were all like, okay, it's a Ryan Krauser kind of day. His next throw, 23:31, which moves up to the second best throw ever at that point. And then you were really thinking, okay, so he's breaking the world record today, but the question is, how far will he go? Then his next throw is 22:94, which I think only like 4 or 5 men have ever thrown further than that in history. And that was by a significant margin his worst throw of the day to that point. And then round 4, 23:56. World record by nearly 2/10 of a meter. Um, I It's 23:56. I don't think I need to describe it really to say how insane it is. Um, and then his fifth throw is 22:80, and then he goes 22:86 in the sixth round. So yeah, 3 throws over 23 in the same series when 4 men have thrown over 23 in history, I believe. So yeah, that's pretty freaking crazy, I'd say. His average on that series, and no fouls or anything, all 6 throws, his average was 23:12, which, for those of you that don't know, was the world record held by Randy Barnes for about 30 years and almost definitely aided by steroids. That was the world record. Only Randy Barnes, Ryan Krauser, and Joe Kovacs has thrown that far in history. And that was the 6-throw average for Ryan Krauser on this beautiful day in Los Angeles. I don't know if it's Ryan Krauser, so I wouldn't put it past him, but I really don't know if or when we will ever see that level of one-day dominance by a single person ever again in the sport of track and field. It is just 23:56 and 23:12 average. That's all. I'm done. My number 2 spot, I have the Bowerman Mile from the Prefontaine Classic this year. Um, we came into it, and it was a world record attempt for Jakob Ingebrigtsen. He was coming off of, obviously, the disappointing loss in the 1500 at Worlds. And so this was really theoretically, he was healthy and not sick at this point. So this was going to be his big moment to show everyone that he is still the top dog. And this came on day one of a double attempt by him to break 2 world records in 2 days at the mile and the 3,000 meters, which are 2 of the hardest distance records to break. They're held by Hicham El Guerrouj and Daniel Komen, who are just like gods of middle distance running. But Jakob's already taken a world record from each of them. So, I mean, they aren't really gods to him, I think. So, Jakob comes in there, and he was doing his Jakob thing and just talking to everyone. In the press conference the day before, Yared Nuguse was asked about breaking the American record, which I think was at 346 flat. And he was like, yeah, like that'd be really cool. And then Jakob just chimes in and goes, yeah, just stick with me and I'll get you under 346. And I mean, it's true. He was going to do that. And he very much did. Race comes around. He led basically the whole way. But I think Nuguse was a lot closer to him than most people thought he would be. And by the end of the race, they end up with the 3rd and 4th fastest times in history in the mile. Fun fact, the 1st and 2nd fastest times ever are also from the same race. So if you want to run a really fast time in the mile, you need someone else to run it with you. For this race, obviously, Yared and Jakob broke the American and European records respectively. There were 3 other national records in the mix. There was a world U20 record by Reynold Kip Career Chariot. And in the field, there were 10 personal bests set in one race. So this is like the Oslo 1500, but on steroids. Not literally. I don't think any of them have tested positive for steroids yet. We'll say like no, because they can't do crack either. On adrenaline, I guess we'll go with, because that's legal. Yeah, it was crazy the things that field did, and they all ran so fast. And then the next day, Jakob comes out, and once again in the 3,000, I believe it was also the 3rd and fastest times in history for him and Yomif Kajelcha, and that one was like even closer than the mile was. Like Kajelcha, I think lost by like 200ths of a second. Like it was really close. But also that makes you wonder what Jakob could have done in the 3K if he hadn't ran the 3rd fastest mile ever less than 24 hours before. But this was crazy. The mile as a whole, and then when you include Jakob's double on top of that, this was a insane cap to probably, I'd have to assume this has to be the best year in middle distance running in the history of the world. I mean, I can't picture, especially with what Faith and Gudov did on the women's side, and then what Jakob and all those guys did in the men's side, and the everything. I mean, Jakob did everything: 15-mile, 2K, 3K, 2-mile, 5K, just everything that everyone did was just. It's hard to imagine a year where consistently across the board there were this many high-level performances. All right, last but certainly not least, my top moment from the 2023 track and field season is the Paris Diamond League meeting. Oh boy, let's talk about it. So, this Diamond League meeting had 3 world records go down. You had Faith Kipyegon in the women's 5,000. You had Lemaitre Girma in the men's 3,000 meter steeplechase. And then you had Jakob Ingebrigtsen in the men's 2-mile. To have 3 world records go down in a one-day meet like this is kind of crazy, because usually Diamond League meets only have like 10 to 12 Diamond League events, where it'll be like the Diamond League circuit, which is like the top people in the world competing at each event. So to have 3 out of those 10 to 12 events be world records was it was wild, especially for when it was positioned in the season in early June. And the fact that all 3 of them were distance records as well just kind of added on to the craziness of them. 3 distance world records going down in the span of about 2.5 hours it's I'd assume it's almost unheard of. If you can think of another time where that's happened, please inform me in the comments. But I have a feeling that has never happened before. And especially the fashion in which they were broken. I already talked about the women's 5K where Faith Kipyegon, took it down by a second and a half in the same race as the former world record holder. And then the men's 2 mile, you had Jakob Ingebrigtsen. I think most people probably thought he was going to break the record, but he broke it by like 4 seconds. And in the 2 mile, he ran 7:54, which is back to back 3:57 miles, which is hurting my legs to think about. And then in the men's 3,000, you had Lamechia Girma break the world record by, I think it was like a second and a half. And he was, if my memory serves me correctly, he was basically alone for most of the race. So for that kind of front running to be that effective and him just put everyone away and then put the world record away as well was really impressive. Outside of these 3 earth shattering records, you had 3 other world leads go down. So 6 world leads coming out of one meet. Pretty wild. And then you had 5 additional national records go down in addition to the 3 world records. It was just top to bottom. Every single event delivered, and then everyone continued to deliver because that's just what they do in Paris. But this kind of performance in a one-day meet is certainly an outlier from probably most of track and field history. And so for those reasons, it was a pretty easy number 1 selection for me. All right, so that's my top 10. Like I said, I've had this kind of built out for a couple of weeks at this point now, and I've just been like sitting on pins and needles waiting for these marathons to get done so I could talk about it. I love talking about track. This has definitely brought me out of my deep state of sadness from the Patriots game. Um, but yeah, so that's my top 10. If you guys have any moments that you think I missed out on, which I absolutely did, just because of there were so many crazy things that, like, I feel like there's at least one thing from every single Diamond League meet I could have put on here. Or there were probably like 7 or 8 things from Budapest that I could have put on here that I didn't. There were so many incredible things that happened in the track world this year. I didn't even mention anything indoors related, and that's a whole other ballpark. Um, but yeah, so if you guys think I missed out on anything, let me know. Make sure to drop that down in the comments. I'm probably gonna have a Patriots Saints video out a couple days from now. I'll probably be even more sad than I was last week. Um, but yeah, that's that. Thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe, and then make sure to follow the Instagram too down in the comment, or it's down in the description at Paul Sports Takes. It's pretty simple. I trust you guys can figure it out. But yeah, that's all for me, and I will see you guys next time.